The wrench slipped from Michael's grease-slicked hand as the thunder of rotor blades shattered the desert silence, and a black helicopter hovered inches from his trailer, its door sliding open on a whisper of danger. What happened next shocked everyone and set off a chain of events no one saw coming. Stay with me. This is a story you need to hear. Before we start the story, comment below and let us know where in the world you're watching from today. And if you find this story impactful, don't forget to subscribe for more. The sun dipped low behind the dusty horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and molten gold. A single trailer sat at the edge of a broken asphalt road, its faded white siding streaked with rust and grit. In the distance, wind-sculpted mesas rose like silent sentinels, their craggy edges sharpening in the twilight. A hush fell over the open stretch. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, only the faint whisper of a cooling breeze stirring tumbleweeds across cracked earth. Inside the trailer's narrow kitchen, Michael Jameson crouched by his battered tool chest. His hands, rough and grease-stained, trembled slightly as he tightened the final bolt on a small engine block. Sweat beaded on his brow despite the cooling air. His worn jeans and faded work shirt clung damply to his skin. Each breath felt shallow, as though the weight of his responsibilities pressed against his chest. Michael glanced at the makeshift calendar tacked to the wall, a single sheet of printer paper with dates scrawled in red ink. Tonight's date was circled twice. Tomorrow his daughter's school would start again, and he still owed rent on the trailer. The landlord's last warning echoed in his mind. Next late payment and you're out. He wiped his hands on an old rag and stood, stretching muscles aching from long hours spent at odd jobs, fixing lawnmowers, patching fences, coaxing sputtering engines back to life. But this engine was different. It belonged to Emily Foster, the simple woman who had pulled off the highway yesterday when her RV had sputtered to a stop. She'd pleaded with gentle eyes for help, and though Michael's own plate was full, he'd agreed. Something in her quiet desperation struck a chord he couldn't ignore. Michael glanced toward the trailer door, expecting Emily to return at any moment. He'd left her with a thermos of coffee and a promise shouldn't be much longer. But hour after hour, she lingered outside, picking at the dry grass, her pale hair catching the last light like threads of linen. He worried she might wander into the desert night, lost and alone. He crossed to the small window above the sink. Through the dusty pane, he watched her silhouette against the crimson sky. She stood stiffly, arms folded over the frayed cuffs of her cardigan, as if bracing herself against a cruel wind. The faintest tremor ran through her posture, fear, fatigue, or hope he couldn't tell. He set his jaw. He would finish this repair, and she could go on her way. Maybe by then, he'd have enough to cover rent. Maybe. A sudden clatter made him spin around. A loose wrench had fallen from the workbench, rolling across the linoleum floor. Michael bent to retrieve it, fingers brushing the cold metal. As he flipped it into the air and caught it, his gaze fell on the photo taped above the toolbox, a little girl with bright eyes and tangled curls perched on his shoulders, arms outstretched. Emily's daughter, Lily. No, that wasn't right. The girl was his own daughter, Sarah. She died 2 years ago in a car accident, and ever since, the world had felt too empty. He swallowed hard, breathing past a sudden tightness in his throat. Since Sarah's death, he'd clung to work like a lifeline, avoiding memories that threatened to swallow him whole. Yet, here he was, extending help to a stranger. He shook his head, pushing down the past, and leaned over the engine one last time. With a firm twist, the bolt clicked into place. Outside, Emily took a step forward, her boots stirring little puffs of dust. She carried something in her hand, a letter, its edges frayed, stained with tears. She hesitated at the threshold, jaw clenched as though gathering courage. Michael straightened and opened the door. A faint breeze drifted in, carrying the scent of wild sage and heat-baked earth. "It's ready," he said, voice gruff but steady. Emily's eyes flicked to the engine resting on the makeshift stand. Relief flooded her expression, then worry creased her brow. She lifted the letter. I was hoping you could read this." Michael frowned. He'd expected payment in cash or gasoline perhaps, but a letter? He stepped back, motioning her inside. The trailer's cramped living space held little: a threadbare couch, a small table with two mismatched chairs, and a battered bookshelf lined with dog-eared manuals. A single bulb hung overhead, its light humming softly. Emily sat at the table, smoothing the envelope before her. "It's not mine," she began, voice brittle. "Someone dropped it by my campsite. It's addressed to someone named Richard." Michael set his wrench aside and folded his arms. "Maybe you should send it on its way." She bit her lip, "But I don't know where." She glanced at him, eyes dark with something he recognized, the fear that comes when life goes askew. "I thought maybe you could help." He hesitated. Helping her meant more time, more effort, time he couldn't spare. Yet the shadow of Sarah's smile in that photograph urged him on. He nodded once. "All right, let's see it." Emily unfolded the letter with trembling fingers. The cursive inside was ornate, unfamiliar to modern eyes. Michael leaned in. The opening line spoke of debts, old debts, owed to powerful people. There was mention of a rendezvous at a distant helipad, coordinates scribbled at the bottom. The final lines were urgent, warning the recipient not to trust certain associates. Emily's lips quivered. "I don't know what it means, but I'm scared." She pressed the letter to her chest. "I was heading home to start over. I have nothing to do with this." He glanced at the night sky through the small window. A sliver of moon hung low, and the first stars began to wink open. Out there, the desert would swallow them if they strayed too far. But here, in this tin box, secrets waited to be unearthed. Michael ran a hand through his sandy hair. "You called it starting over. What were you running from?" Emily looked down. After a moment, she lifted her eyes to meet him. "My ex-husband. He has friends who aren't kind. I found this letter near my camp. I think he's trying to lure me back. Someone wants revenge. I don't know why." A heavy silence filled the room. Michael felt his heart hammer in his chest, not from fear, but from an odd sense of duty. He remembered Sarah's laughter, how she trusted him without question. He owed her that much, to protect, to guide, to stand when fear pressed. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low, "I'll take your engine out to the main road. You can hitch a ride to the nearest town. As for this letter, let's keep it safe." Emily's relief was a quiet thing, a soft exhale that seemed to make her shoulders drop an inch. She offered him a faint smile, one that trembled but was real. "Thank you, Michael." He nodded, wondering where her last name had gone. She'd introduced herself simply Emily. He wondered if he would ever learn anything more. Night settled fully, and the bulb overhead buzzed as he finished cleaning up. Emily watched from the table, a letter folded in her lap. He noticed the way her fingers traced the edges, as if trying to memorize every crease. He thought about locking that letter away somewhere, protecting it like Sarah's old stuffed bear. Finally, he turned off the light and motioned toward the small couch. "You can sleep here tonight. I'll wake early." He paused. "Don't open that letter again." She shook her head. "I won't." He left her there, her silhouette soft against the couch cushions, and he stepped out into the cool night. The air tasted of sage and dust, and the sky was a dark canvas dotted with stars. Michael closed the door and leaned against it, listening to the quiet hum of the trailer's single fan. He thought of Sarah, her bright laugh, her boundless dreams. He thought of Emily, stranded and frightened. And he thought of the strange turn his life was taking, repairing engines one day, unraveling dangerous secrets the next. As he stared into the desert night, a sense of purpose stirred within him. He would protect Emily, guide her through whatever lay ahead. He would face whatever storm was coming, because he couldn't let another innocent soul face it alone. Far off, a coyote cried. The wind sighed through the scrub, and the trailer's metal siding groaned. Tomorrow would bring motion. He would load the engine, hitch it to her RV, and send her on her way. But after that, those coordinates in the letter, they beckoned like a distant promise or a deadly trap. Michael squared his shoulders. He wiped sweat from his brow and turned back toward the trailer. Inside, Emily waited, trusting, fearful, hopeful. He would not fail her. And somewhere beyond the mesas and the silent highways, a helicopter's distant drone would soon break the desert's hush. But for now, in the twilight stillness, father and stranger, and a promise written in ink, stood at the edge of a story that would change them both forever. Dawn broke in sheets of pale lavender and rose, the horizon softened by morning mist that clung to the desert floor like a secret. Michael Jameson stood outside his trailer, arms folded across his chest, watching the first light touch the wind-swept plain. He'd slept little, the weight of the letter's cryptic warning pressing on his mind like a stone. In the hazy calm, even the tart scent of sage felt sharp with anticipation. He glanced toward the ramshackle fence that marked the edge of his small plot of land. Beyond it lay endless scrub and the lonely highway where Emily's repaired RV would soon roll away. He checked his watch, 6:30, and felt a flicker of relief. Soon he could hand her the engine, send her on her way, and return to the familiar grind. Odd jobs, wrenching engines, empty nights haunted by Sarah's laughter. Footsteps crunched on the gravel behind him. Emily emerged from the trailer's doorway, her cardigan pulled tight around her shoulders. Morning light caught fine strands of silver in her pale hair, and her eyes, once so steady, now seemed restless. In her hand, she clutched the folded letter as though it were a lifeline. "Morning," Michael said, offering a quick nod. "Morning," she replied, voice soft. She glanced at the engine block, sitting on a wooden pallet beside his workbench. "All set." He reached for a worn leather strap. "Just about." He lifted the engine onto a small cart with one practiced heave, muscles tense under his shirt. Emily watched him, lips parted, as though she wanted to say something but hesitated. When he turned back, she held out the letter. "I can't stop thinking about this. What if it's more than just a threat?" Michael shook his head, his brow furrowed. "It's not our fight. You fix that engine. You pay me, you go. That letter," he paused, "that letter's Anthony's problem. He used the name she'd given months ago, the name she'd sworn to use on the road. Emily Foster. She'd adopted it when she left home, reinventing herself free from her ex-husband's shadow. He'd never asked for her real name. She'd seemed harmless enough. Her gaze flickered inward, and she let the letter drop. My ex's friends. Dangerous ones. They don't like me running away." Michael felt a jolt at her words. Running away. He'd assumed she was simply stranded, exhausted. Running away meant fear, rooted deep, a haunted woman with something to lose. He squared his shoulders. "Then let's get that engine mounted. You hit the highway, find a town, and stay as far away as you can." She nodded, stepping back. He latched the engine to the RV's hitch, each click and snap echoing in the empty yard. Sweat beaded on his brow, and he wiped it with a rag. When the final connector clipped into place, he straightened and offered her hand. Emily grasped it, her grip surprisingly firm. "Thank you," she said, eyes shining. He nodded and stepped aside. She climbed into the driver's seat, engine idling with a soft roar. For a fleeting second, he saw her as a beacon of fragile hope, a woman on the cusp of new beginnings and of terrible danger he barely understood. "Be careful," he called. She smiled, a small, bittersweet curve of her lips, and waved. Then she shifted into gear and rolled away, dust rising behind her like a pale veil. Michael watched until the RV disappeared beyond the fence line. Quiet settled again, but beneath it, a tremor of unease pulsed. He turned back to his trailer, every nerve taut, as though his world had shifted on its axis. Inside, he made coffee, the rich aroma filling the cramped space. He poured 2 mugs out of habit and carried one back outside. The other he left on the table, untouched, as if expecting Emily to return. She never did. By mid-morning, stillness reigned. The only movement was the sun climbing over the mesas, burning off mist to reveal the harsh brightness of the desert. Michael fetched his toolbox, determined to lose himself in work. But as he reached the gate, a distant thrum reached his ears, mechanical, low, urgent. He froze, listening. The sound grew, a pulsing beat that rattled the emptiness. Michael's heart thudded. He scanned the sky. There, far off, he saw it, a dark dot hovering low above the cracked road. A helicopter. His breath caught. That letter's coordinates had mentioned a helipad. Who could be landing here on this lonely stretch of desert? And why? He set down his tools and jogged toward the fence. Dust whipped around his boots as he climbed onto a low concrete barrier. Through the rising haze, the helicopter descended in a wash of wind and gravel, its rotor blades chopping the air with a relentless rhythm. When it touched down, its skids gouged shallow marks into the brittle earth. The door slid open with a hiss, and a figure stepped out, slim, tall, dressed in charcoal slacks and a crisp white shirt. Michael squinted, shading his eyes. The man's hair was dark as coal, slicked back. His face was sharp, eyes cold beneath a strong brow. Michael's pulse quickened. The stranger's gaze swept the horizon, then snapped to Michael. He strode forward, voice measured. "You must be Michael Jameson." Michael tensed. "Who's asking?" The man produced a slim folder, gold lettering shining in the sun. Foster and Company. Michael's heart lurched. Emily's surname, and a company he'd never heard of. The man's lips curved in a faint, dangerous smile. "I'm Daniel Foster," he said. "Emily's brother." Michael blinked. "Brother?" Daniel's smile vanished. "Yes, I've been trying to reach her. She disappeared, left without a word. I'm here to bring her back." Michael's jaw clenched. "She wanted to leave." Daniel's eyes narrowed. He glanced toward the horizon, where the road stretched empty. "She's in danger. People from my father's business, powerful people, have been looking for her. They believe she stole something. I'm here to protect her and recover what he claims she took." Michael started, the folder trembling in Daniel's hand. "You think she stole from your father?" Daniel nodded, stepping closer. "She took something valuable. I don't know what yet, but until I find out, I can't let her wander the desert alone." Michael felt anger coiling in his gut. He remembered Emily's gentle plea, her fear of an ex-husband, her trust. And now, this stranger claimed to be her brother, flanked by wealth and power. "You can't just land here with a helicopter and demand answers." Daniel's eyes blazed. "She's my sister. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe and to recover what she took." Michael shook his head, heart pounding. "I'm no one's bodyguard. I fixed her engine. That was the deal." Daniel's gaze flicked toward the battered RV disappearing over the horizon. "That engine will only take her so far. I'm here now. You can help if you choose, or you can watch as she slips deeper into danger." Michael's mind raced. Daniel Foster, a man with resources, connections, a family empire. And Emily, his sister, had disappeared into the desert with a letter that hinted at betrayal and old debts. Michael pictured her pale face, the tremor in her spine as she waited by his engine stand. She'd trusted him. He couldn't abandon her now, even if Daniel Foster frightened him. He swallowed. "All right, I'll help for Emily's sake." Daniel's expression flickered with relief. Surprise? He nodded curtly. "Good. We leave at once. Gather what you need." Michael hesitated, looking back at his trailer, his home, his prison of loss and memory. But the desert wind whispered of change. He thought of Sarah's bright laughter, of Emily's fragile hope. He couldn't turn away. "I need time to pack," he said. "And water. Lots of water." Daniel barked a short laugh. "You're learning fast." Michael headed inside, mind churning. The hum of the helicopter faded as it settled deeper into the scrub. Dust swirled at the fence's edge, and the folder Daniel held gleamed in the morning sun. A storm was coming, one fueled by secrets and family betrayal, by debts owed and lies half told. Inside the trailer, Michael grabbed his duffel bag, tossing in clothes, tools, and a faded photograph of Sarah. He filled his canteen and a spare jug with water. Every moment, he felt the shift from solitary mechanic scraping by to reluctant companion in a dangerous family drama. He returned outside to find Daniel standing by the helicopter, arms crossed. His face was unreadable, determined, perhaps ruthless. Michael approached, duffel slung over one shoulder. "What now?" he asked. Daniel gestured to the small pad beside the helipad. Michael's jaw tightened. His world, once contained by fix-it jobs and fading memories, had exploded in a whirlwind of danger and deception. He looked past Daniel to the rising sun, its light cutting through the haze. "Let's go find her," he said, voice steady. Daniel nodded. "Yes, let's." As they climbed into the helicopter, the wind roared, and the desert laid itself bare beneath them, an endless canvas of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Michael settled into a seat, heart thrumming with adrenaline. Ahead lay a journey into a past he barely understood, to unearth truths that would bind him to Emily's fate and to Daniel's ruthless mission. The rotor blades sliced the air. The trailer shrank below, a lonely dot on the vast plain. Michael pressed his hand to the window, watching the desolate beauty of the desert flick by. Somewhere ahead, Emily waited, alone, fearful, hopeful. He promised himself he would find her before the betrayal at the heart of the Foster family tore them apart. The inciting force had arrived, and there was no turning back. The story had truly begun. Michael settled into the helicopter's leather seat, the wind's howl fading into a steady drone. Beside him, Daniel Foster leaned forward, folder in hand, lips pressed into a thin line. Michael glanced at him, feeling the tension radiating from Daniel's rigid posture. He cleared his throat. "So," he began, "where exactly are we heading?" Daniel tapped the folder. "The old Foster airstrip, abandoned for years northeast of here, by about 50 miles. Coordinates match those in Emily's letter. If she used that landing pad, we might find her tracks, tire marks, footprints, maybe even the RV." His voice was careful, heavy with unspoken urgency. Michael nodded, scanning the desert below. Endless shades of tan and sienna rolled out, broken only by scrub brush and dry washes. "Let's hope we can follow something," he said. He wondered whether Emily had grown up in this desert, or if she'd lived a different life until she ran. He didn't know her history, only the battered RV and that terrified letter. Daniel watched him with guarded eyes. "You said you knew nothing of our family," he said quietly. "Why help her? You could have walked away." Michael's hands tightened on the window frame. "I saw her fear. I remembered my daughter's eyes when she trusted me. I can't ignore that." He hesitated, then added, "And I owe her. She gave me hope, if only for a moment." Daniel's shoulders twitched. "Hope," he repeated, as if testing the word. "That's dangerous. Our father doesn't like hope. He likes control." Michael swallowed. He hadn't realized how deeply he'd spoken until he saw Daniel's eyes darken. A sudden memory flashed, the photograph of his daughter tucked in his duffel. He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the smooth plastic of the photo's edge. He closed his hand around it. "Control," he said softly, "can break people." Daniel looked away. "I'm sorry," he said after a beat. "I didn't mean to." He cut himself off, folding his hands. Silence stretched between them, filled only by the churning blades overhead. Michael sighed, leaning back. "Tell me about Emily," he said. "What did she do to make her own brother hunt her down?" Daniel's jaw clenched. "It's complicated." He flipped open the folder, revealing yellowing papers. "Our father, Richard Foster, started a mining operation here decades ago. Emily, then called Emma, discovered foul play, polluted water, illegal kickbacks. She confronted him. He threatened her. So she disappeared, changed her name, and started over. But she found proof, the ledger entries, the ledger that's supposedly missing. He tapped the papers. She stole it, Michael. She took evidence." Michael frowned. "Evidence or something more valuable? You said the letter accused her of stealing something powerful." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Powerful in the wrong hands. If she gives it to authorities, our father's empire collapses. If she hands it to someone else, God only knows." He closed the folder. "I need that ledger." Michael studied with him. Daniel's voice was steady, but Michael detected a tremor of fear beneath the surface. He wondered if Daniel truly sought justice or if he aimed to protect the family fortune. He thought of Emily's gentle face, her fear of ex-husband and unknown pursuers. He didn't know which brother to trust. The helicopter banked, and Michael gripped his seat as they turned toward a narrow valley. What about Emily's safety? Michael asked, You said you want to keep her safe, but what if she doesn't trust you? Daniel's gaze flicked to the window. She won't. She believes I'm part of the machinery. She escaped. But I'll prove I'm not like him. He paused, voice softer. I'll do anything to bring her home as long as she's safe. Michael stared at him. The edges of Daniel's words sounded sincere, but his eyes were guarded. He weighed the man's conviction against the risk. Then something clicked. Everyone, even the coldest hearts, had a breaking point. Michael vowed to keep watching, to protect Emily even if Daniel betrayed her. Below them, the sketch of an airstrip appeared, a stretch of cracked blacktop flanked by tumbleweeds. Michael felt his chest tighten. They were close. He leaned forward. I see it. The pilot eased the chopper down, and they landed with a jolt that rattled Michael's teeth. They climbed out into heat and dust. Daniel led the way, a folder clutched under one arm. Michael followed, duffel slung over his shoulder. The pilot folded the helicopter blades and climbed into the cockpit, eyes grave. 40 minutes back, he said before closing the door and lifting off. Michael watched it recede, leaving them alone amid silence, so vast it pressed on his ears. Daniel studied the runway. Faded yellow lines crumbled beneath stray sagebrush. She wouldn't have come here without preparation, he muttered. She knew she'd be followed. Michael set down his duffel and opened it, pulling out water bottles, a small first aid kit, and a flashlight. He handed Daniel a bottle. Stay hydrated, he said. Daniel took it, nodding. They walked along the runway, eyes scanning for clues. Michael's boots crunched on the cracked asphalt. Each step seemed heavier than the last, as if the desert tried to pull him down. He wondered how many secrets lay buried beneath these stones. At the far end, they found fresh tire grooves cutting across the runway, then veering into the scrub. Michael crouched, running a gloved finger along the groove. These look recent, he said. Full-size tires, RV, not car. Daniel knelt to examine. She drove it here to meet someone, he concluded, or to hide it. Michael looked up at the scrubland. Maybe she needed time to read the letter, plan her next move. He stood, brushing dust from his knees. Should we follow them? Daniel studied the tracks, brow furrowed. There's a shallow wash not far from here. If she followed it, it could lead to an old ranch. Our father used it as a retreat. He's still got men there. He looked at Michael. We'll need to be careful. Michael's heart pounded. The idea of coming face to face with the foster patriarchs, men sent a chill through him. Do you trust me to watch your back? Daniel met his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Yes. He turned, pointing toward a faint trail that led into rocky terrain. That way. They moved into the scrub, following the tracks. Michael could feel the heat rising from the ground, the sun's glare bouncing off every surface. He pulled his shirt collar up to protect his neck. The desert wind carried a distant hiss, perhaps the swish of lizards or the whisper of hidden watchers. Daniel broke the silence. What's your story, Michael? Why'd you stay here in this emptiness? Michael paused, surprised by the question. I wanted distance, he said after a moment. After my daughter died, I couldn't face crowds. People reminded me of what I lost. Here, the desert has no faces, just space to breathe, to fix engines and keep memories at bay. Daniel nodded slowly, as if marking Michael's words. Loss changes you, he said. I lost my sister once, before she vanished. I thought I failed her. Now, I have a chance to make it right. Michael felt the weight of those words. He looked at Daniel anew, not just as the rich brother hunting his sister, but as a man wrestling with his own guilt. Then, let's bring her home, he said quietly. For both our sakes. Daniel's expression softened, and he offered a small, grateful smile. Thank you. They pressed on, slipping into a narrow wash lined with boulders. Shadows cooled the air, and Michael felt the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. Yet he kept his eyes sharp. In the hush, every sound grew loud. The rasp of gravel underfoot, the creak of Daniel's boots, the distant cry of a hawk. After a quarter mile, they came upon a dilapidated ranch house, half hidden by mesquite and dead brush. Then, with Michael's help, he pushed the door wide. Inside, dust motes swirled in shafts of light. Broken furniture lay scattered, and the floorboards creaked under their weight. Daniel's eyes scanned the room, landing on a small table where a single footprint marred the dust. He knelt, examining it. Looks like women's boots size 6. That fits Emily. Michael crouched beside him. And here. He pointed to a scrap of paper crumpled beneath a chair leg. He picked it up carefully, smoothing it out. It was a torn page from a ledger, handwritten numbers and notes. His pulse quickened. She found the ledger. Daniel's face lit with both hope and fear. Then she risked everything to get proof. He clutched the scrap, but someone was here after her. Michael followed his gaze upward. A ceiling beam had deep scratches, as if someone had tried to climb out. Or in. He shone his flashlight around the room. On the far wall, a faded map hung crookedly. Michael traced the coordinates in Emily's letter with his fingertip. She marked the spot. Daniel stared at the map, then at Michael. She wanted to meet someone here, he said softly. We're too late. Michael's jaw hardened. No, not too late. He rose and faced the door. She left clues. We'll find her. He turned, catching Daniel's eye, and I'll protect her. Daniel nodded, the glow of gratitude in his eyes. I know you will. He slipped the ledger scrap into his folder, then turned back to the shadows. Let's move. The sun's high, and we don't have much time. Michael followed him into the desert heat, every step a promise, to Emily, to Daniel, and to the memory of his daughter. The path ahead was fraught with danger and deception, but for the first time since he fixed that engine, he felt alive with purpose and bound by loyalty to a woman he barely knew, yet felt compelled to save. The drama was unfolding, and with each moment the stakes climbed higher, pulling them deeper into a web of family secrets and moral choices they could not escape. Michael followed Daniel through the narrow canyon, every step stirring dust that smelled of sun-baked stone and sagebrush. The afternoon light slanted low, painting the weathered cliffs a warm amber. Daniel's stride was urgent, almost frantic, and Michael struggled to keep pace, his duffel jostling against his side. Somewhere ahead, Emily waited, alone, vulnerable, trusting them both. He reminded himself of his promise, to find her and keep her safe. They emerged into a hidden hollow, ringed by crumbling adobe walls and the skeletal frame of what once might have been a desert chapel. The roof had collapsed long ago, leaving only ragged beams crisscrossing the pale blue sky. A single wooden pew lay half-buried in sand beneath a broken stained glass window, its colored shards scattered like jewel fragments. Daniel rounded a corner of the chapel and froze mid-step. Michael hurried to catch up. There, crouched behind the altar stones, Emily knelt in the half-light. Her cardigan was dusty, her face pale, but her eyes blazed with relief when she saw them. "Emily!" Daniel called, voice trembling. Emily looked up, confusion momentarily clouding her expression. Then she rose, and Michael noticed her hands were bound with a length of fraying rope. Panic lanced his chest. He dropped his duffel, sprinted forward, and grabbed Daniel's shoulder. What happened? Daniel's face went white. They were here when I arrived, he stammered. 2 men in black. He broke off, gaze darting around the hollow. They took her. They both rushed toward Emily. Michael pulled a small pocket knife from his belt and slashed the rope binding her wrists. She rubbed her bruised skin, eyes wide with fear. "Michael," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Thank God." Daniel stood back, hands clutched at his sides. "We have to leave," he said, but his tone lacked conviction. "They could come back any minute." Michael's heart pounded. "Who are they?" he demanded. Emily shook her head. "I don't know. They called me sister, said they were family business. They said Daniel sent them." Daniel's eyes widened. "I didn't." Emily's voice trembled as she stood. "They showed me the letter. They said you lured me here." She stared at Daniel, then at Michael. "They have proof." Michael felt a cold drop in his stomach. "Proof of what?" She swallowed hard. "That I stole the ledger. They said you wanted the original pages, and that I'd kill to get it." Daniel's jaw clenched. He ran a hand through his dark hair. Yes, I sent them, he confessed in a low rush. Emily, I thought if you saw real muscle. Emily's eyes filled with tears. You betrayed me. Michael stepped between them. Hold on. He drew in a steadying breath. Daniel, what's going on? Daniel looked at Emily, anguish warring with determination in his eyes. Emily, I'm your brother. I risked everything to find you. But father, he wants that ledger back. He'll stop at nothing, he sent his men. He paused, voice catching. I panicked. I thought if they saw me working with Michael, someone outside the family, they'd hold off long enough for us to leave together. Emily's shoulders shook. So you hired goons? You bound me and left me to be found by strangers? Daniel's face crumpled. I'm sorry, Em. I thought it would protect you. He turned to Michael. I didn't know how else. Michael's blood roared in his ears. The ground beneath his boots felt unstable. You lied, he said flatly. You manipulated us both. Emily backed away, voice barely a whisper. I don't know who to trust anymore. Daniel ran a hand across his face, his crisp shirt wrinkling where his palms had pressed. I never meant. Michael stepped closer, digging deep into the well of resolve he'd built since Sarah's death. Daniel, listen, he said, your father's men are dangerous. But you put Emily in more danger by betraying her trust. You're the one she ran from. Daniel sagged, his shoulders drooping. I know. He closed his eyes. I'm so sorry. Emily stared at him, eyes red. Dust motes danced in the slanted light, turning the air golden. Michael felt the desert hush around them, as if the land itself held its breath. He reached into his duffel and pulled out the crumpled page of the ledger the torn scrap Daniel had shown him earlier. The faded handwriting stood out against the yellowed paper. He handed it to Emily. She pressed it to her chest, eyes locked on the ledger's edge. In that moment, a new realization dawned on Michael. The ledger scrap in Daniel's folder was the only proof Daniel ever had. The real ledger might still lie somewhere untouched. Daniel's betrayal might have been born of desperation, fear of their father's wrath, but it didn't excuse it. Emily raised her eyes to Daniel. If you're my brother, why didn't you come yourself? Why hide behind hired muscle? Daniel swallowed, voice thick. I was scared. I didn't know what they'd do to you. He looked at Michael, or me. Father has eyes everywhere. Michael's gaze sharpened. Father who? Richard Foster? He'd almost forgotten name, swallowed up by the shock of betrayal. Daniel nodded. He built an empire. He has resources, reach. He believes Emily stole evidence that could destroy everything he created. Emily turned to Michael, clutching the torn page. Is any of this true? Did I really steal evidence? Michael met her eyes. He thought back to the ranch house, the disturbed dust, the torn corner of a ledger page. It looked real, he said, but a single scrap. Anyone could forge that. We haven't found the full ledger yet. Emily's breath caught. Then, I might be innocent of everything they accuse me of. Daniel looked at her, hope flickering. You are innocent, he said softly. I know it now. I was wrong to doubt you. Emily shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. You used me. You played us both. Daniel bowed his head. Michael felt a surge of protectiveness toward Emily. Listen, he said, voice firm. You need the truth. All of it, not scraps or lies. Daniel raised his head, eyes meeting Michael's. Agreed. Let's find the real ledger. Michael nodded. He turned back to Emily. Together we'll unearth it, and then you decide what to do. She glanced at Daniel, then at Michael. In her eyes, Michael saw pain, relief, and suspicion all mingled. Okay, she said quietly, but I'm in charge. No more secrets. Daniel swallowed and nodded. No more secrets. Michael exhaled, tension draining from his shoulders. The first twist of their journey had shattered illusions. Daniel wasn't the savior he pretended to be, but neither was he their enemy. He was a frightened brother, desperate to protect both his sister and his family's legacy. Emily's path forward lay not in running or hiding, but in reclaiming the truth. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the skeletal chapel. Betrayal had cut deep, but now it fueled their determination. They would find the real ledger, confront the foster patriarch, and uncover the secrets that had driven Emily into the desert. Michael looked out across the hollow at the broken pews and shattered glass. The place felt like a tomb for forgotten promises, but tonight it would become the seed of truth. He offered Emily his arm. Daniel fell in step beside them. "Let's move," Michael said. "We've got a long night ahead." And so they left the chapel ruins behind, 3 figures stepping into twilight, bound by a shared purpose and the sharp knowledge that nothing would ever be the same again. The twist had changed everything. Trust would have to be rebuilt, loyalties tested, and the real enemy found, not in distant shadows, but in the heart of the foster family itself. The sky above the canyon mouth was bruised purple when Michael Jameson, Emily Foster, and Daniel Foster stepped onto the rocky trail. Michael's boots crunched on loose shale as he scanned the ridge ahead. They carried only what they could sling over their shoulders: Daniel's folder, Emily's jacket pocket with the torn ledger page, and Michael's duffel of tools and water. Every breath tasted of dust and urgency. According to these notes, Daniel said, unfolding a half-map he'd sketched from Father's files, the ledger was hidden at an old well on the northern plateau. The entrance is sealed by a rusted iron grate. I think Emily took the page to remind herself of the code. 1983, the year of the mine's first payout. Emily peered over his shoulder, eyes tired but alert. "We're following the well," she said. "It's circular on the map, about 2 miles east." She pointed toward a cluster of wind-whipped sage. "That way." Michael hefted his duffel. "Lead on." His voice was steady, but inside his chest thudded a drum of anticipation. He worried about running out of water, about being intercepted by Father's men, about the bargain he'd struck to protect Emily. He swallowed, forcing calm. Crisis had become their constant companion. They picked their way through mesas and dry creek beds. The moon rose pale and thin, illuminating jagged rock like bleached bone. Michael glanced at Daniel, who strode ahead with grim determination. Daniel's face was tight, shadows carved by moonlight emphasizing the lines of exhaustion and guilt. He wanted to ask how deep Daniel's loyalty ran, whether he would turn on them again under Father's pressure, but Michael swallowed the question. Trust had to be earned step by step. After an hour of walking, Emily paused at a jagged outcrop and knelt, brushing dust from a flat stone. Here, she whispered, beneath the stone lay an etched number, 1983. A chill crept up Michael's spine. Emily's eyes shone with hope. "You were right." She pushed, and the slab rotated, revealing a narrow shaft plunging into darkness. Michael flicked on his flashlight. The beam trembled as he trained it down the hole. A rusted grate blocked the shaft midway. This must be it. He lowered himself into the shaft on a knotted rope, heart pounding. Below, water dripped somewhere unseen, and the scent of damp stone rose. Daniel joined him, and Emily lowered herself last, landing with a soft thud on a narrow ledge. In the beam of Michael's light, the grate's iron bars glinted. Rust had softened the metal, but the bars were still formidable. Michael surveyed the mechanism, a simple latch secured by a padlock long since eaten by rust. He knelt, pried the padlock free with a screwdriver, then applied steady pressure to one bar. It gave with a groan of metal on metal. He shoved it aside and peered into the well below. Water pooled at the bottom, catching their flashlights in rippling shards. Around the stone walls, carved niches held dusty jars and tin boxes, Father's hidden cash. Emily's breath hitched. "The ledger," she whispered. Michael lowered a coil of rope. Daniel touched his shoulder. "Let me go," he said softly. "She deserves to claim it first." Emily shook her head. "No, we do it together." She smiled at Daniel, a brief, fragile truce. Michael gripped the rope and lowered the 3 of them one by one until they stood on the wet floor. He shone his light on a square wooden chest sealed with iron bands. That must be it. Daniel knelt and pried it open with a crowbar from Michael's duffel. Inside lay a thick, leather-bound ledger stamped with Foster and Company. A smile flickered across Daniel's face, but in the next instant, it collapsed into tension. The real thing, he breathed. He let the chest rest against his knee and closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. When he opened them, his gaze snapped to the shaft entrance. A harsh cough echoed above, then a low chuckle. Michael's blood froze. They weren't alone. Emily grabbed the ledger, cradling it like a wounded bird. They found us. Michael yanked the rope taut. Up now. He began climbing, pulling Daniel and Emily out one by one. Daniel handed him the ledger as Emily emerged, face pale. A raw wind whipped dust into their faces. At the lip of the well, 3 black SUVs sat under the moon, engines idling. Floodlights cut arcs of brilliance across the plateau. Figures moved behind tinted windows. Michael's jaw clenched. Go, back through the canyon. I'll draw them off. Daniel gripped his arm. No, we go together. Emily swallowed, clutching the ledger. We stick together. Her voice wavered, but her resolve was clear. Michael nodded and dropped the rope. Stay low. They sprinted toward cover as floodlights swung. Voices shouted orders in harsh tones. A spotlight lit the trail. Michael threw a rock to the left. The beam swung, revealing a lone figure stepping from behind a boulder. He wore a tailored black suit, tie flapping in the wind. His face was masked by moonlight, but his posture spoke authority. Freeze! A voice rumbled through a loudspeaker. Daniel grabbed Emily's hand. This way! He led them through a narrow slot canyon, the rough rock biting at their shoulders. Michael followed, heart-pounding, breaths ragged. Moments later, the canyon walls swallowed their tracks. Michael pressed back against a stone, panting. Above, he heard the stomp of heavy boots and muffled radio chatter. Emily crouched beside him, eyes wide, the ledger clutched to her chest. I thought I protected you, Daniel whispered, voice raw. But Father's men, his legal team, he sent out as best. They'll stop at nothing. Michael swallowed. We can't stay, he said. We need a plan. Emily's voice cracked. Where do we go? Everywhere is his land. Michael thought of the trailer of home. But home was a tomb of memories now. He shook his head. We head for the highway. I know a place, an old mechanic friend in Prescott. He owes me a favor. Maybe he can hide us. Daniel's eyes flickered. Arizona, 150 miles north. By dawn, they'll send a team that way. Emily glanced at the ledger, lips trembling. I can't let them have this. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. You won't. He turned to Daniel. Can you drive the RV? Daniel nodded. Yes, but they'll spot us if we use it. Michael considered. We leave on foot to the county road, ditch the RV in a wash. Then we cross the desert at night and meet the friend at dawn. Emily nodded, determination replacing fear. Daniel exhaled. All right. They crept back to the plateau edge, under cover of shadows. Michael led, scanning the rocky cracks. Every snap of a twig sent his heart into his throat. 3 SUVs sat where they'd parked, one by the well, 2 scattered along the plateau. Floodlights churned like angry eyes. Michael pointed toward a swirl of boulders. Through there, they sidled into cover, side by side. Emily leaned close. Her breath ghosted over his cheek. Thank you, she mouthed. He offered a tight smile. Trust me. They slipped past the far SUV, boots silent on gravel. Once they reached the wash, Michael halted. Lay low until sunrise, he whispered. Then he paused. Dawn would bring relief, but also risk. The engine of betrayal hummed in his ears. He realized how much he'd come to care, not just about Emily's safety, but about her future. And Daniel's redemption lay in this moment, too. Emily pressed the ledger against her heart. Daniel folded his arms, chest tight with guilt and hope. Michael took a final glance at the plateau, its floodlights now distant pinpricks. We'll make it, he said, voice resolute. They settled under a tumbleweed's shelter, the desert night pressing close. Michael watched the stars, each a distant flame in the black sky. He felt the weight of choices ahead. Whether to trust Daniel fully, when to confront Father, How to safeguard the ledger without sacrificing Emily's freedom. In the hush, Emily drifted into uneasy. Now his tools were loyalty, courage, and a promise to protect a stranger who had become something like family. As the desert wind sighed, Michael whispered into the darkness, "Tomorrow we fight back." And in that vow lay every ounce of his resolve, to face father's empire, to stand against betrayal, and to forge a path of truth through the unforgiving sands. The first orange glow of dawn seeped into the wash, turning the cool shadows golden. Michael rose, hoisted his duffel, and shook Daniel gently. Emily stirred, clutching the leather-bound ledger to her chest, eyes fluttering open. Michael offered her a water bottle. "Drink," he whispered. "We move before they wake." They slipped from their rocky hiding place onto a faint dirt track, leading north. The land stretched flat, the scrub low and sparse. Michael scanned the horizon, heart thrumming. The desert seemed endless, perfect cover for those who knew its secrets, but treacherous for those who did not. After an hour's walk, the county road appeared like a ribbon through the dust. Daniel stopped at its edge, eyeing a curve ahead where the RV lay half hidden behind a sun-bleached boulder. "There," he said quietly. "We ditch it, then continue on foot." Emily stared at the battered RV, once her refuge, now a beacon for their pursuers. She hesitated. Michael put a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe," he said gently. "We'll finish this together." She nodded, voice firm. "Let's go." They rounded the boulder, Michael keeping low, Daniel cutting the engine, so only the soft cough remained. Daniel popped the trunk and dragged out 2 dusty backpacks, tossing them to Michael. "Tools," he muttered. "Spare clothes." Inside lay jumper cables, a coil of rope, water, and Danielle's company issued pistol in a worn holster. Michael slid it into his belt. A distant rumble made them freeze. Michael held up a hand. 2 black SUVs rolled around the curve, floodlights on the sun's first rays. Their tires churned gravel as they slowed to inspect the RV. Daniel's jaw clenched. Michael ducked behind the RV's bumper. Emily crouched beside him, eyes wide. The first SUV came to a halt. 2 men climbed out, rifles slung across their backs. They moved toward the trailer's front wheel. Michael's knee pressed against Emily's arm. "Stay calm," he whispered. One agent bent, yanked open the hood, and crawled inside. The other moved to the back, rifling through luggage. Emily's breath came sharp and quick. Daniel's face was hard. Michael peeked around the tire. The man in the driver's seat of the second SUV watched from behind his mirror, phone pressed to his ear. The engines idled, a mechanical heartbeat filling the morning air. Michael put a finger to his lips and stood. He stepped into the open, pistol drawn. "Down," he barked. Both men froze, rifles snapping up toward him. Emily and Daniel emerged beside him, the ledger clenched in Daniel's hand. "Back off," Michael warned. "Now." The first agent scoffed. "Who are you?" "A mechanic playing hero." Michael's jaw tightened. "I am her friend." He gestured toward Emily. "And you work for a man who would kill his own daughter to hide the truth." The agent's eyes flicked to Emily, then to Daniel. Recognition crossed his face. "Mr. Foster." He lowered his rifle. "You're under orders." Daniel stepped forward, voice ringing across the dawn. "I revoke those orders." He held up the leather ledger. "This belongs to my sister." The second agent climbed down from his SUV. "Sir." The directive came from the top. He nodded toward the distant road, where the roar of a third engine grew. A sleek, black helicopter hovered low, rotors beating the air into a frenzy. Michael's heart thundered. The Foster patriarch had arrived. "We have to end this now," he said, eyes locked on Emily. "Are you ready?" Emily lifted her chin. "I am." They backed toward the boulder, where Michael had stashed his duffel. Daniel dropped the ledger into it and slung it over his shoulder. Michael tossed the pistol into Daniel's hand and handed Emily the rope coil. "Keep this safe." The helicopter settled, dust swirling into towering plumes that swallowed the SUVs in a choking cloud. A heavy door clanged open, and a tall figure descended, a man in a tailored suit, silver hair gleaming in the sun. "Richard Foster." His gaze swept the scene, Emily clutching rope, Daniel with pistol, Michael standing like a pillar of defiance. A slow smile curved his thin lips. "So, you've brought the ledger." His voice was soft, cultured, but ice-cold. Daniel straightened. "You lost your authority the moment you betrayed Emily." Richard's smile widened. He clapped once, a single echo against the SUVs. "Well spoken, Daniel. But loyalty is a luxury I cannot afford." He upholstered a small pistol as easily as he would flip a page. "Hand over the ledger." Michael, balling his fists, looked at Emily. She nodded, tightening her grip on the rope. Then, with deliberate calm, she stepped forward. "Father, you have no right to that ledger. It proves you poisoned the town's water, ruined lives for profit." She raised her voice so all could hear. "I won't let you hide it anymore." Richard's eyes narrowed. He aimed at Emily. "You're a fool." Daniel took a step between them. "Leave her out of this." Richard fired once. Low. Fast, a warning shot that sent gravel spraying around their feet. Daniel lurched, pistol drawn, but Michael caught his arm. "Don't." He glanced at Emily, who stood tall, heart hammering. Richard pointed at Michael. "And you, simple mechanic, think you can protect her?" Michael squared his shoulders. "I know what it means to protect someone you love. I'd do anything to keep her safe." Richard laughed, a hollow sound. "Love? Safe? Look around. You're in my desert with my people. This ledger is mine." He took a step forward, finger on the trigger. Emily hurled the coil of rope. It wrapped around Richard's legs. Before he could react, Daniel lunged, grabbing his father's arm and twisting it so the gun fell free. Michael sprang forward, snatching the pistol. He pressed it against Richard's temple. Richard's eyes flashed with rage. He spat. "You'll regret this." Then the echo of rotor blades pulled him back, his pilot lifting him to the waiting helicopter. He snarled at his son and daughter. "This isn't over." He lifted his hand. "Get them." The men in black raised their rifles. Michael yanked Emily behind the boulder, bullets thudding into the rock. Daniel stood beside them, pistol raised. Emily gripped Michael's arm. "We can't outrun them." Michael scanned the canyon's entrance. A narrow slot between rocks led back, toward the wash. "Head for the slot," he said, pulling Emily. Daniel covered their retreat. They ran, dust stinging their lungs, gunfire crackling like dry lightning behind them. Michael led them through the rocky labyrinth, heart pounding as rocks slid beneath his boots. At the slot's mouth, Emily stumbled. Daniel caught her, pulling her inside. Michael ducked, last as bullets chipped the stone above his head. They sprinted across the wash, the helicopter's roar overhead masking the SUV's engines. Michael looked back, saw the chopper wheeling low, searchlight bouncing across the ground. Emily's panic rose, but Daniel shouted over the wind, "Keep going." At the far edge of the wash stood a battered pickup, the friend's rig exactly where Michael had told him to park. Michael waved. The engine coughed to life. Daniel guided Emily in. Michael jumped in the shotgun. He spat gravel from his mouth and jammed the truck into gear. The pickup lurched forward as the helicopter's searchlight swept over them. Metal blades chopped in the air. Bullets pinged off the steel bed. Daniel shoved Emily down. Michael stomped the accelerator, tires spinning in dust. They barreled down a narrow Jeep trail, the chopper in close pursuit. Rotor wash rattled the canopy. Michael swerved around a sandstone butte, spray of pebbles flying. Up ahead, the road forked. One path led to open desert, the other to a shallow canyon. Emily gripped Daniel's arm. "Which way?" Michael didn't hesitate. "Canyon." He aimed for the narrow gorge, where canyon walls would block the helicopter's path. The pickup hit uneven ground, rattling their bones. Michael wrenched the wheel, sending them crashing between towering walls. Above, the helicopter banked hard, searchlight flickering. It could hover a while, but the canyon's walls forced it upward, farther from its target. Michael floored the gas. Daniel craned out the window, pistol ready to fire at any traveler or guard. Emily sat curled against the seat back, eyes closed, clutching the ledger. They burst from the canyon into a flat plain. Ahead, dawn's full light reigned over scrub and mesas. Michael eased the truck among the trees, cutting the engine and falling into a trembling silence. The world felt impossibly bright, the first rays of sun, a promise of freedom. Daniel reached across and took Emily's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. Emily turned to Michael, voice soft. "Thank you, Michael, for everything." Michael looked at the ledger, bound in leather, pages heavy with truth and consequence. He thought of Sarah's photograph tucked in his pocket, his own ledger of love and loss. Now, he carried another promise, to help Emily rebuild her life. He climbed from the truck, letting dawn's warmth wash over him. Daniel and Emily joined him among the trees. Above, the helicopter receded, powerless to follow. The SUVs lay abandoned, their men chased back by desert and loyalty. Emily opened the ledger's cover, running a fingertip over the crisp ivory pages. "This is my history," she said, voice trembling, "and it's our story now." Daniel closed his eyes and nodded. "Our story." Michael placed his hand on Emily's shoulder. "What you do with it next," he paused, meeting her gaze, "that's up to you." Emily looked at Daniel, then back to the horizon where the sun climbed fully. "First," she said, voice steady, "we go home." Michael nodded. "Then we make things right." They turned toward the open desert, the three of them stepping into the sunrise. Dust swirled at their feet, carrying whispers of past betrayals and future hope. The road ahead lay uncharted, but they faced it together, mechanic, sister, and brother, with truth in hand and hearts unbound by fear. In the distance, the mesas stood witness to their promise, that even among shadows and secrets, loyalty and courage could carve a path to redemption. And as the sun climbed high, their journey, once fractured by betrayal, began anew, guided by the light of truth and the power of forgiveness. The morning sun climbed overhead as Michael Jameson, Emily Foster, and Daniel Foster stood in the quiet wash, the leather-bound ledger safe in Emily's arms. The world around them seemed to pause, no sirens, no rotor blades, just the softest of wind through Joshua tree branches. They'd escaped the clutches of Richard Foster's men, but the true battle had only just begun. Emily closed the ledger and pressed it to her chest. "We need to get this to the authorities," she said softly. Her voice carried a quiet resolve born of sleepless nights and moments of raw fear. Daniel nodded, running a hand through his dark hair. "I know a friend at the state attorney's office. He'll take it under seal and launch an investigation." Michael studied them both. The weight of the past days, the betrayals, the revelations, the violence, hung between them like a storm cloud. He thought of Sarah's photograph, still tucked into his pocket, and felt the familiar ache of loss. Yet here, in Emily's determined gaze, he felt something like a purpose returning, a reason to stand and to fight for something larger than himself. They piled into Michael's friend's old pickup, the engine grumbling awake. Emily cradled the ledger on her lap, protective as a mother shielding her child. Daniel drove, eyes fixed on the two-lane highway that would lead them to the city. Michael sat in the back seat, duffel bag at his feet, mind racing with possibilities and consequences. "Thank you," Daniel said, quietly over the roar of the engine, "for everything you did, for saving us, for believing in Emily." Michael shrugged, half smiling. It was the right thing to do. Emily looked between them. "It was your choice. We're here because you stood by us." She opened the ledger, flipping to the first page. The embossed Foster and Company seal glinted in the sunlight. These pages contain years of secrets, water tests, pollution reports, off-the-record payments. If this goes public, it will bring down more than just a company, it will force a reckoning. Daniel's voice was heavy. Father built his fortune on cutting corners, silencing critics, and ignoring the people whose lives he ruined. I don't know how to face him when this all comes out." Michael leaned forward, gripping Daniel's shoulder. "You don't face him alone. Emily and I will stand with you." Daniel glanced at Emily, who nodded. "Yes," she said, "we'll do it together." The city skyline rose on the horizon, towers of glass and steel shimmering in the heat. Michael parked outside a nondescript law office. They gathered the ledger and their courage, and Daniel led them inside. Within minutes, the ledger was in the hands of a stern-faced assistant, then a seasoned state attorney who listened as Emily and Daniel recounted every detail. Michael hovered in the back, heart pounding with both fear and hope. When Emily handed over the ledger, the attorney offered a thin smile. "You three are very brave." He greeted Daniel with a respectful nod and promised protection. Witness security, encrypted files, a team ready to subpoena records and call on expert witnesses. Outside the office, the three stood in the shade of a narrow alley. Emily exhaled, the first real breath she'd taken since dawn broke. "It's done." Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "We can finally put this behind us." Michael watched them, chest tight. He realized the ledger's true power lay not just in exposing Richard Foster, but in reclaiming Emily's agency, her right to speak truth, to fight back, to shape her life unbound by fear. They drove back toward the desert, the road quieter now that the day had reached its midday lull. Michael steered the pickup past scrub and mesas, each mile easing the tension that had wound them tight. Emily sat beside him, gazing out at the landscape she once saw as prison. Now it felt like home, barren yet honest, fierce yet free. As the sun lowered itself again, they returned to Michael's trailer. It stood where he'd left it, battered, humble but safe. Inside, Michael brewed coffee while Emily and Daniel shared a quiet meal of canned soup and crusty bread. They spoke little, fatigue dulling their tongues. Yet, in the comfortable silence, a new bond formed, one forged in danger, tempered by trust. Later, under the pale glow of a single bulb, Michael sat alone at the small kitchen table, Sarah's photograph in his palm. He thought of her laughter, her small hand in his, the innocence he could never reclaim. He'd spent years hiding from pain, turning his world into a workshop of broken engines. But these past days had changed him. He'd taken a stand, become a guardian not just of metal and machines, but of truth and human lives. Emily joined him, leaning on the table. She placed a hand gently over him. "Michael, I know how much you've lost. I can't bring Sarah back, but I want you to know you did something incredible. You gave me a chance to live again." His throat tightened. "I lost myself after she died. I thought by hiding here, fixing engines, I could bury the pain. But it found me anyway when I saw you, when I read your fear. I realized protecting someone else could heal me, too." Emily's eyes glistened. "Your kindness saved me." She paused, then smiled a tender, weary smile. "Maybe Sarah nudged me to break down on your road." He studied that smile, his heart warm. The grief remained, a crater in his chest, but it no longer defined him. He placed the photograph on the table beside Sarah's old teddy bear, dust motes dancing in the bulb's haze. "She did," he whispered. "She guided me back to life." Daniel joined them, carrying 3 mismatched mugs of coffee. He offered a silent toast, clinking his mug against theirs. To new beginnings. They drank, warmth spreading through their veins. Outside, the desert night settled, stars flickering like silent witnesses. Inside, 3 souls stood at the threshold of something new. Emily, free of her father's lies, Daniel, ready to confront his family legacy, and Michael, embracing a purpose beyond his own grief. Before bed, Emily and Daniel prepared to head home, to Emily's small apartment in the city where friends awaited, and to Daniel's life in the Foster family shadow. Before they left, Emily wrapped Michael in a fierce hug. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll never forget this, ever." He held her tight. "Be safe, and don't let anyone ever scare you into silence again." Daniel shook Michael's hand, firm and grateful. "You have my eternal thanks. If there's ever anything I can do..." Michael waved him off, voice gentle. "Just live honestly." When the pickup drove away under a canopy of stars, Michael stepped onto his trailer's porch. He looked toward the horizon, vast and open. In his hand, he still held Sarah's photograph. He tucked it into his shirt pocket, close to his heart. He thought of the ledger now locked away in evidence chambers, of justice taking its course, of Richard Foster's empire toppling under truth's weight. He thought of Emily reclaiming her life, Daniel forging a new path, and in that weave of lives, found a reflection of his own redemption. He closed the door behind him, leaving the past sealed in steel and stone. In the quiet that followed, he vowed to live each day with purpose, to help those in need, to mend the broken, to champion the powerless. The desert wind whispered through the scrub, carrying echoes of hope. Michael Jameson stood alone under the vast night sky, the moral of his journey clear. Truth is fragile and dangerous, but it is also the most powerful force for renewal. Betrayal can break us, but forgiveness and courage can bind our wounds and light our way forward. And even in the loneliest places, human connection can spark a new dawn. He turned back inside, the door clicking closed, and drifted to sleep, dreaming not of loss but of possibilities. The ledger's pages might outlive them all, but its true legacy was written in their hearts. A testament to love's power to heal, justice's demand to be heard, and the promise that even the most broken among us can find redemption in reaching for something greater than ourselves. If you found this story powerful, make sure to hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Your support helps us bring more important stories to light.